You know what really messes with your head? It's not losing something expensive. It's standing there while someone looks you dead in the eye and tells you that their mistake is somehow your fault. She was screaming at me in the hospital hallway, fingers shaking, voice cracking, saying I'd ruined her son's life, saying if I hadn't bought that car, none of this would have happened. And I remember thinking, wow, this woman really believes her own version of reality. Because the truth was simple. Her son stole my car and almost got himself killed doing it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've lived in that neighborhood for a long time. Quiet place, trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, the kind of community where people wave but don't really talk, and everything runs through the HOA. If you've ever lived under one, you already know how that goes. Rules stacked on rules, fines for breathing wrong, and one person at the top who treats that clipboard like it's a badge. In our case, that person was a woman named Linda Harper. Not her real name, obviously, but if you've met one HOA president, you've met them all. Late 40s, always smiling but never with her eyes, always talking about community standards while making everyone miserable. Linda loved rules more than people, and power more than peace. She lived for it. Her son, Tyler, was around 17 at the time. Quiet, awkward, always hovering near her like a shadow that hadn't learned where to stand yet. Most people barely noticed him. I did later. See, the thing that kicked all of this off was the car. I worked my whole adult life for that car. Years of overtime, skipped vacations, driving beaters that barely made it through winter. I don't come from money. Nobody handed me anything. So when I finally pulled into my driveway with that brand new midnight gray performance sedan, engine humming low like it knew it had earned its place, I just sat there for a second with my hands on the wheel. It felt like closure, like proof that the long nights meant something. Neighbors came out almost immediately. A couple guys nodded. One kid asked if it was fast. Someone joked that I'd better sleep in it so it didn't get stolen. Normal stuff. I wasn't showing off, just letting myself enjoy the moment. That's when I noticed Linda. She was standing across the street, arms crossed, that tight little smile fixed on her face like she just smelled something bad but didn't want anyone to know. Next to her was Tyler, and he wasn't smiling at all. He was staring, not admiring, not curious, staring. His eyes moved slow, deliberate, tracing the lines of the car, the wheels, the mirrors, like he was committing it to memory. I remember feeling a little uneasy, then immediately brushing it off. He was a kid. Kids like cars. And a story, right? Yeah, that was mistake number one. Over the next few days, the energy around my house shifted. People congratulated me quietly, like they didn't want the wrong person to hear. A neighbor down the block laughed and said, half joking, "You know, Linda hates anything that stands out." I laughed too, because come on, there wasn't a rule against nice cars. I checked, twice. Everything was compliant, parked properly, no oil stains, no noise complaints. Linda, on the other hand, suddenly found a lot of reasons to walk past my house. She inspected my trash bins, claimed the lid wasn't fully closed, warned me about driveway cleanliness. All petty stuff, all things she'd ignored for years. Tyler started showing up too, riding his bike past my driveway, stopping, looking, asking questions. How fast does it go? What year is it exactly? Does it unlock automatically? I answered politely, but vaguely. Something about the way he asked felt off. Too rehearsed, too focused. And Linda would always be nearby, pretending not to listen. One afternoon, she blocked my driveway with that clipboard of hers and started lecturing me about bin placement while I was pulling into the garage. I remember feeling annoyed, distracted, just wanted to end the conversation. So I did something stupid. I keyed in my garage code without thinking about who was watching. The door rolled down slow, and Tyler's eyes followed it like he was watching a vault seal shut. Linda kept talking, voice loud, almost performative. I didn't shield the keypad. I didn't pause. I didn't think twice. Because why would I? He was just a kid. After that, things got quiet. No fines. No surprise inspections. Linda stopped hovering. Tyler stopped asking questions. That silence should have scared me more than the harassment ever did. Neighbors started whispering. Someone mentioned Tyler bragging at school. Someone joked he'd borrow the car one day. I laughed it off again. Locks are locks. Garages are secure. Adults raise their kids, right? The night before everything fell apart, I checked the garage like I always did. The car sat there clean and untouched, lights catching the curves just right. I remember thinking how lucky I was. Then I went to bed, and while I slept, someone else was replaying every detail I'd handed them for free. The HOA meeting that night dragged on like they always did, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, folding chairs creaking every time someone shifted their weight, and Linda standing at the front of the room like she was on a stage instead of a community center floor. She loved these meetings. You could tell. This was her kingdom. Her uninterrupted hour to remind everyone who had the power to find them for grass that was a half-inch too long. She went on and on about lawn edging, about approved shades of exterior paint, about driveway alignment like it was a moral failing instead of concrete and gravel. People stared at their phones, sighed loudly, whispered to each other. I was half listening, half thinking about getting home, and finally relaxing. And then I noticed something that didn't fit. Tyler wasn't there. He was usually glued to her side at these things, sitting in the front row, quiet, watching everyone the same way he watched my car. That chair was empty. I told myself not to read into it. Teenagers skip meetings. No big deal. About 20 minutes into Linda's speech, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Something in my gut twisted, and I stepped outside into the cooler night air. The woman on the other end sounded shaken. She spoke fast, clipped, like she was trying not to panic. She asked if I owned a dark gray performance sedan. I said yes. She asked if it was currently in my possession. I laughed. I actually laughed and told her it was parked safely in my garage. There was a pause on the line, long enough to make my stomach drop. Then she said, very carefully, that the vehicle matching that description had been involved in a serious accident on the highway nearly 20 miles away that was heavily damaged, and that the driver was a minor. My brain rejected it instantly. That kind of rejection where your mind just refuses to process what it's hearing. I told her she had the wrong person. She didn't. She read off my license plate. As she was talking, I looked back through the glass doors of the meeting hall. Linda's phone was ringing. I watched her answer it, watched the color drain from her face, watched her posture collapse like someone had pulled the strings out of her spine. She didn't say a word to anyone. She just dropped the clipboard and rushed past the chairs, nearly knocking one over as she ran out the door. That's when I started running. I don't remember the drive. I remember my hands shaking on the wheel, my thoughts spiraling, my brain cycling through denial, panic, anger, all at once. When I pulled up to the accident scene, it didn't feel real. It felt like watching someone else's nightmare. The car was unrecognizable, wrapped around a barrier, front end crushed, smoke still drifting up into the night air. Police lights painted everything red and blue. A small crowd had gathered, and then I saw him. Tyler was sitting on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, face scraped, eyes glassy, staring at the ground. Paramedics hovered nearby. He was alive, shaken but alive. An officer walked over and asked me to confirm ownership. I nodded, numb, and that's when the words hit me like a punch. The vehicle had been reported stolen. Security footage from my garage showed Tyler entering using the code. No forced entry. No alarm triggered. He didn't take it for a joyride around the block. He took out of town. Pushed it hard. Way harder than someone with his experience ever should have. Confidence had outweighed skill. Physics did the rest. Linda arrived minutes later, hysterical, voice cracking, screaming at the officers about unsafe technology, about irresponsible neighbors, about how this never would have happened if people didn't flaunt luxury. She tried to look at me like I was the villain in her story. The police shut that down fast. They documented everything. Statements. Photos. One officer mentioned traffic cameras along the route Tyler had driven. I noticed Linda stiffen at that, like she knew something else was about to surface. I went home that night without my car, without sleep, without any real sense of what the next day was going to bring. I stood in my garage, staring at an empty space that had held years of effort, and all I could think was how stupid I'd been to assume trust was automatic. The next morning, before Tyler was even discharged from the hospital, there was a knock at my door. Process server. Linda was suing me. Negligence. Unsafe property practices. Emotional distress. And somehow, in a move that still makes my jaw tighten, She accused me of enticing a minor with a high-performance vehicle, like the car had called out to him on its own. I read the paperwork twice. Then I laughed. Just once. Short and sharp. And then I called a lawyer. Things moved fast after that. The police report was clear. Theft. Reckless driving. No ambiguity. Security footage from my garage showed Tyler entering the code, opening the door, backing out like he'd done it before. Traffic cameras traced his entire route, clocking speeds well above the limit. A gas station clerk remembered him bragging about the car like it was already his. And then the subpoenas went out. That's when Linda's confidence evaporated. Texts surfaced where she joked with friends about Tyler borrowing the car someday. HOA emails came out where she'd threatened me with fines unless I dropped my insurance claim. Neighbors came forward with stories about her abusing her position, selectively enforcing rules, bullying anyone who pushed back. The HOA board suspended her pending investigation. She tried to spin it as a witch hunt. It didn't stick. Court was a spectacle. Linda cried, then yelled, then blamed technology again. She talked about how hard it was to be a single mother, how the community had turned on her, how her son was a victim of temptation. The judge listened patiently, then dismantled her arguments piece by piece. My countersuit went through without issue. Insurance covered part of the loss. The rest landed squarely on Linda and Tyler. The HOA removed her as president unanimously after auditors found misused funds. Tyler faced charges for vehicle theft and reckless driving, mandatory counseling, community service, a record he couldn't talk his way out of. By the time it was over, Linda barely spoke to anyone. People crossed the street to avoid her. Doors closed when she approached. The woman who once ruled that neighborhood with a clipboard couldn't even get a nod. And still, it didn't feel like victory. Because when the noise died down, when the courtrooms emptied and the paperwork stopped coming, I was left standing in a quiet garage with nothing but an echo where my car used to be. That's when it really hit me how much this whole thing had changed me. Weeks passed after the court wrapped everything up, but the neighborhood didn't snap back to normal the way people expect things to. There was no reset button, no neat fade out where everyone learned a lesson and moved on smiling. It was quieter, sure, but it was the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air after a storm when you're not sure if it's really over. I'd walk out into my garage some mornings out of habit, coffee in hand, keys already in my palm, and I'd stop short every single time. The space where the car used to sit felt bigger than it actually was. Empty concrete has a way of doing that. It echoes. It reminds you of what's missing. Friends kept asking if I was going to replace it. Same model, maybe something even nicer. Insurance plus restitution made that possible, eventually, but I couldn't bring myself to rush it. That car had been a symbol of something, years of effort, patience, sacrifice. Losing it like that didn't just sting financially. It rewired how I thought about reward. What surprised me most wasn't the loss, though. It was how people changed. Neighbors who barely spoke before suddenly lingered when they saw me. Conversations lasted longer. People shared stories about run-ins with Linda they'd never felt safe talking about before. Threats, fines pulled out of thin air, the way she'd single people out and smile while doing it. It was like my situation gave everyone permission to finally exhale. Linda, on the other hand, shrank. I saw her once at the grocery store a month later. No clipboard, no confidence. Just a tired woman staring at a shelf like she couldn't decide what she was even looking for. For a split second, I felt something close to pity. Not sympathy, not forgiveness. Just that uncomfortable awareness that power can disappear faster than people think. She didn't look at me. I didn't speak to her. Tyler kept his head down after that. Community service vest, eyes glued to the pavement whenever he was outside. I heard through neighbors that counseling hit him harder than court ever did. Turns out facing consequences without someone else yelling on your behalf can be jarring. I don't know what kind of adult he'll become. I hope, genuinely, that this was the moment that stopped him from becoming something worse. As for me, I changed in quieter ways. I stopped assuming good intentions. Not in a bitter way, just in a realistic one. I learned that boundaries matter even when you don't think you need them. Especially then. I started paying attention to the small things again. Who lingers too long? Who asks the same question twice? Who watches instead of listens? There's a scene that still plays in my head sometimes. Linda in that hospital hallway, voice shaking with rage, telling me her son was almost dead because of me. The certainty in her eyes. The absolute refusal to accept reality. Back then, it made me angry. Now, it mostly makes me thoughtful. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. In her mind, she was right. She'd built a version of the world where rules only applied outward, where authority meant immunity, where her role as a mother erased her responsibility as a parent. And when that illusion shattered, she grabbed onto the nearest target and blamed it with everything she had. That's not rare. It's human. Dangerous, but human. I never replaced the car. Not yet. Maybe someday. Instead, I used part of the settlement to take time off. Traveled. Slept without alarms. But my nervous system calmed down in ways I didn't realize it needed. I came back lighter. Not happier in some dramatic sense, just steadier. The HOA eventually elected a new president. A retired guy who mostly wanted things quiet and fair. Meetings now last 20 minutes. Fines dropped. People laugh again. Funny how fast peace returns when control leaves the room. Sometimes new neighbors ask what happened. Why Linda isn't around. Why there's an unspoken rule about not letting authority concentrate in one place again. I tell them a shortened version. I leave out the anger. I leave out the shouting. I leave out the sound of metal folding in on itself on the side of a highway. I just tell them this. Be careful who you give power to. And be careful what you assume people won't do. Because the most dangerous mistakes aren't loud. They're quiet. They're the moments you don't think twice. The keypad you don't shield. The warning sign you laugh off. The person you underestimate because you want life to stay simple. Justice, when it came, didn't feel like triumph. It felt like gravity. Calm. Inevitable. Heavy. Everyone ended up exactly where their choices led them. I lost a car. Linda lost control. Tyler learned that consequences don't reset like garage codes. And the neighborhood finally learned to breathe. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think justice was actually served here? Or did everyone just get lucky the damage wasn't worse? Was I careless? Or was she looking for an excuse long before the opportunity showed up? And if you were in my place, would you have done anything differently? Let me know in the comments. I read more of them than you probably think. And if you've ever dealt with HOA madness, power-hungry neighbors, or situations that spiraled way further than they should have, share your story too. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most telling.